Hello, everyone. Mike Vanoy, Vice President of Marketing and Sales at Assure. And I want to welcome you to today's show. Normally we're talking about payroll, HR, compliance, talent management topics, and especially in the last, 2 years, tons of stuff on compliance with so many changes related to COVID. But our mission with this show is to bring the best information we possibly can to entrepreneurs, to small businesses, to mid-sized companies to help them grow. We provide payroll and HR services in software to help you stay compliant and save money so that you can build great teams and you get talent that can really help you grow and get behind your mission. And so growth really is at the core of what we do. And I'm really excited about today's guest because today is all about growth. As we start, I don't think we'll ever say a post-pandemic world here. I think clearly the world is opening up. Whether that we do our very best to not be political here. So whether you think it's coming too fast, too slow, doesn't matter. It's pretty obvious that it is opening up, right? Mask mandates being removed. And the economy is getting trucking along here, and so with that comes challenges, maybe around inflation or around war for talent. But clearly, we are getting back into growth mode as an economy, and so we wanted to share information today to talk about, what ways can you best grow your company. And maybe in some ways that you haven't thought of. And so a pretty cool guest here today, David Wilson. He's the managing principal of FundUup. David spent, I think it's a couple decades, David, right, in the world of finance and funding small and mid-sized companies to help them grow in, I think, some non-traditional ways that I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably just don't even realize exist as funding options. Well, right. So welcome, David.
All right, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Okay, so we'll just jump in a little bit to the deep end of the pool right from the beginning. I feel like there are so many entrepreneurs in small businesses, especially. I think a lot of mid-market companies understand M&A in the accretive value of acquiring companies and to help them grow. But I think so many small businesses, you have an owner, founder. Maybe it's a home improvement business and they used to swing a hammer themselves. And so they're passionate about the work and they want to build a team and they want to sell more deals and they're trying to grow organically. You've got an architect who started out hanging a shingle for themselves, now finds them in a CEO administrative role, trying to grow a company and trying to do it, with sweat and muscle and effort, trying to grow. I think there's so many businesses just don't even think about, should I buy a competitor? Should I buy complementary a company that has a complementary adjacent service to me? Speak into this topic because you work with people like that every day, David, about people who probably haven't even been thinking about acquisition as a real component of their growth strategy.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely. I'm working with one in particular right now. I think the first thing to really consider is the financial impact on after the acquisition. So if we're going to pursue this opportunity to acquire someone else in our space, how does it impact our overall revenue? What debt service is involved? And you kind of go from there. So if you're going to pay X for a company, it's going to increase your revenue by 4 times, then you throw in the debt service. I think it might make sense. That's a good place to start. That's where the conversation should start. And I think though the next piece that I would add to that would have to do with ease of integration. And I think you guys can relate to this. I wrote down systems when I was kind of brainstorming this. So many times I've seen companies acquire companies, and their systems just they're so vastly different, and you can't integrate, or it's difficult to integrate the accounting systems. It's difficult to integrate the payroll systems. It's difficult. I've seen a case or two where it's not possible and you have to scrap it. And third, what employees, if any, come with the purchase? So are you sliding employees over to the new company? Do the employees from the old company, if you will, come with the purchase? What management challenges? What leadership challenges are you buying? So these are all things that one should consider.
Yeah, so I'm not going to make this a shameless plug for sure, but when I think systems, I'm right there with you. I mean, you need to develop from a technology perspective, right? As a small business owner, maybe you want to grow. Maybe you do have a competitor that there's a fire sale situation that there's some revenue that you could acquire, a team that you could acquire and expand your business. But you're going to be completely duplicative on administration because your shop isn't in order to absorb their shop, or vice versa, or how do you bring these things together? So part of being an owner, I believe, is creating a systematic approach to your tech stack, right? So whether it's payroll, HR, recruiting systems upstream in the HR process, 401k integration in learning management systems downstream in the HR process, but whatever your tech stack is, that you have this really thought through in a way and documented in a way so that if you acquire, they can simply plug into that system. Where have you seen this done well, and maybe what mistakes have you seen in your career here, David?
So I have seen it done well from an accounting systems standpoint. This particular acquisition simply involved a merger of QuickBooks Online. So it was QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Online. Going from two separate administrators to one whole administrator of the new system. But it was relatively simple. Some tweaks here and there, but it was the same software, so that was easy.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind was what sounded like the same scenario, but it was QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. So acquiring company was on QuickBooks Desktop, and other company, the acquired company, was QuickBooks Online, and that is not the same software. They are, in fact, and I didn't know this, but they're quite different. And it was a very, very huge challenge now, because what ended up happening was the acquiring company had to convert to QuickBooks Online, and it migrated to, and it was just, it wouldn't have been that big a deal had they known what the shot was, and they didn't expect to have to do that. They thought it was just, hey, we're shaking hands and we're good. So yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe the guidance that we would want to give our audience here is that you just need to, as you do your due diligence, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do a deal, right? If there's value, you should do a deal. If this dovetails your growth strategy, the acquisitions can be one of the single fastest ways that you can grow. If you have a product that is lightning in a bottle, it's easy, right? Customers are going to come to you. You're going to grow like crazy. If you're in a fiercely competitive, mature market like home remodeling, hair salon, accounting services, most business services, right? Acquisition might be the single best approach to growth for you. But you got to budget in all the change management, right? Maybe their systems are better than yours. Maybe your systems are better than theirs. Probably more important is to have a system that you're modeling into. But if it requires outside third-party consultants, part-time temp work to come in and handle a migration of systems, just make sure you're modeling for that as part of the acquisition.
Yep, absolutely.
I wanted to you hit 3 points, David. The last one I think is just so timely. Do employees come with a purchase? So if you're making some asset purchase, and maybe it's just buying a customer base, maybe it's their technology, maybe it includes real estate in the transaction. In today's war for talent, we talked a lot about that on this show. Unemployment at record levels, job participation rates still not where we were pre-pandemic, right? So, we talk about this all the time. You walk into a restaurant in my hometown at 8 o'clock at night, and 2/3 of the tables are open. You're like, oh, great, I'm going to get a table right away, and they tell you it's a 30-minute wait because they don't have wait staff. They can't hire people to even serve you, right? The war for talent really has hit Main Street. Speak into this, David, because I think this is a missed opportunity for people. They think, well, I don't want to just buy that competitor, but I also can't buy. I can't hire enough people to accomplish my own mission. A lot of times, an acquisition is a way to get talent with sometimes decades, certainly years of experience and expertise in your domain, and you can upskill your talent like overnight. Can you speak into cases where you've seen this done well or maybe done poorly?
Well, the one client in particular, I wasn't on the talent acquisition side, so this client was acquired. So it was a client that we had actually been funding their hiring, and they were in the IT space, and they were growing like crazy. In the span of about 3 years, they went from zero to exit. Exit was about a $5 or so million exit, and it was an acquisition by a competitor who recognized that, okay, this particular IT skill set, we can go and find all of these folks ourselves, maybe, right? So if more of these people even exist, they may not. What's the cost of acquisition of each of these individuals versus or we can just buy this company that has the 50 or so highly skilled folks that we need. We plug them, and this particular integration was pretty seamless, and it was relatively simple, just because we're dealing mostly with the people. So the people, their assignments didn't change much. Who was paying them was going to change. So from their standpoint, fairly invisible. But this acquiring company recognized that my client's company was the value. The value was in the people.
Yeah, you know what? There's a million ways to look at people, process, technology, people, process, systems. But one of the 3 pillars is always people in a business, right? And if you're in a mature market, especially, there's not huge changes in, say, technology in the industry that you participate in. Certainly, there's always some change, but the real value is your people, or the real value is their people. That may be the single biggest reason to do an acquisition. I can just say a couple stories of my own. Probably 15 years ago, I was running a company, software company, and we got a call from Google, and I'm like, oh my gosh, payday! This is going to be amazing. Google's interested in buying us. Well, what Google was interested in wasn't our tech at all. They were interested in our engineers. And once they learned that most of my engineering team was outsourced offshore, the conversation ended quickly. But it was really eye-opening to me because, Google did, they simply couldn't get enough engineers, and they're out there looking at trying to buy small companies like mine simply because they saw it as a way to acquire engineers.
Right.
And I think about it, I mean, and I would invite anybody, assuresoftware.com/investor relations. You can navigate to it on our website. Acquisition is a meaningful part of our growth strategy. We're very public about this. And a huge component of this is talent, right? And so as we acquire companies in this space, it's pretty common to get people who maybe have been using our software indirectly for 5, 10, sometimes 20 years. And the amount of expertise that can become part of your organization overnight is truly game changing. And it also requires a really thoughtful strategy. This you can't have a forgive my way to describe it. This can't be, hey, who's your daddy? We bought you. We're the boss. You're going to do what we tell you, because you can lose that talent. That can evaporate overnight too. And so if you're paying for the talent and they walk out the door because you're a jerk on day one, this can backfire. So this requires a lot more thought than just financing. But I think maybe I would end on this point and ask you to close out on this point, David. I believe that in today's war for talent, the people may be one of the most important reasons that you consider doing an acquisition today. Anything else you want to close on this topic, David?
No, I think you nailed it. You actually covered a point that I wanted to make sure we covered, which is that possibility. So when you're acquiring a company, you have to, and they come with employees. Who's to say those employees are coming? Who's to say those employees are on board? So that it could be deal closes and everybody walks out. That's possible. And how do you ensure that doesn't happen? I don't know that you can. I think it comes in the due diligence phase. You do the best you can to understand the culture, understand the leadership, but I don't know that you can prevent that.
Yeah. I mean, people have more choices than ever, and they vote with their feet, right? If they're behind your mission and excited, oh my gosh, look at all the new opportunities I have to advance my career. Look at all the new ways, the new tools and products that I can now help my customers who I care deeply about serving. Look at the mission that they have and how that either dovetails or is different than our current mission. They're going to make their decisions whether they stay with the acquiring company based on those things. Because if they're not in alignment with you or they don't trust you, they're gone, right? Because there are too many options available. So if talent acquisition is a major component of your M&A strategy, they're human beings, and you got to treat them like such. How would you want to be treated if you were acquired? They're going to feel the exact same way. So you have to have a huge people component of your M&A strategy. So, all right, this is a perfect segue, David. So you're in the financing business. So obviously you can provide financing to a small business who is looking to acquire companies. But you can also provide financing to a company that is simply trying to hire more. So we talked about the difficulty of perhaps hiring employees, but whether it's hard, whether it's easy, maybe you have a great employment brand, maybe you don't have an employment brand to attract. It still takes money to do it. So take me through how you work with clients, funding. I'll use this, sounds like consultant speak, but talent acquisition. How do you think about possibly acquiring debt, money to go hire employees to accomplish a goal?
in my space, um, the best example I have in my career of where this happened was the one I gave you previously. The company was in the IT space. They went from, as I said, 0 to 5 million, and then they were purchased. I think what made that company fit this question, well, this scenario best, is the space they were in. So they were in the federal government contracting space, so the IT, but to federal government, Department of Defense, and various other departments. So this company was marketing a particular service to various departments. It was up to the departments to say, yes, we want this, and we want 10 of these types of people on site in 2 weeks.
Mm.
So it was important for them to, number one, keep a bench of people ready to go.
Yeah.
When the Department of Defense, when the Department of the Treasury says go, but we need to have them ready before that meeting, in anticipation of them being hired. What that required them to do was, and these are high-level IT folks that are making, these are six-figure IT folks that would like to be paid, and they want to get paid when they start.
They may in fact require it.
Right, exactly. And there's no shortage of opportunities for these folks. So going back to what we spoke about earlier, they could leave. So and they could leave right now, and they could walk across the hall and possibly find a better opportunity. So the company's dilemma was, okay, we need X number of dollars to float, to pay these employees while we are waiting to make money to bill them out, and make the money. So in this particular case, is it time to hire more employees? Yes, because what we don't want to happen is the Department of Defense says, yes, we need 10 people, and we have one person on the bench. Now we can't fulfill the contract. As far as in other spaces, what we've experienced is less about we need funding to hire more people. A lot of folks were needing, a lot of early clients needed funding to make payroll. We're working on one now. They realize on Tuesday they're not going to make payroll on Friday. And so that's where we come in and provide funding for them to make payroll. So it's not so much a hiring issue, it is an employee issue, because those employees want to get paid too. And it's just I guess a different side of the coin, the other side of the coin.
Okay, so let's go there. And I'm thinking maybe we can kind of address. So there's the cool, sexy side of this, right? It's like, hey, I'm gonna, a lot of entrepreneurship is making bets, right? I'm making a bet that I'm gonna buy this $200,000 CNC machine to go in my shop that I'm gonna have debt service on. But it's going to allow me to take orders from manufacturers that I can provide parts for, right? You can make a bet that I'm an IT staffing company. I need to hire talent because I have to have them on the bench to be able to acquire new customers and actually fulfill orders, because no one's going to give me the orders if I don't actually have the IT staff already on the payroll, right? So those are risk reward bets. And there's a cash flow component, right? So I think a lot of times we think about the CNC machine for your tool and die shop. You think about, okay, it's a physical asset. I got an amortization schedule. Here's my monthly debt service. Here's how many customers I'd have to acquire, how much revenue I'd have to generate. Seems pretty straightforward. I think people frequently don't think about it in a human services, a human delivered services kind of a business. You got to think about people the exact same way, right? And so you might actually have to go into debt to level up and get to the next level. And there's a cash flow component there. That same thing is true if you're on the bad side. How do I make payroll next week? I need to go get funding, but am I making my problem worse? I obviously legally have to pay these people who have performed work, but am I better off borrowing money and acquiring debt service, or am I better off having to downsize my organization and rationalize my expenses? Can you speak to how you work with clients, helping them to think about cash flow um, in acquiring debt and therefore debt service to pay employees?
Sure. I always ask the question when I'm during the initial consultation, if you will, not just what is the money for. So what's the money for? Oh, we need to make payroll by Friday. Why do you need to? Why is this a challenge currently? Well, because in one case, working with a city government, our city government payment is coming in a week and a half, but it's not in, and we won't make payroll. So that's why. So now I understand that this isn't what I don't want to happen is I don't want to fund this company to make payroll this week, so make payroll on Friday, and then next week we're funding you again to make payroll. That's not, so that speaks to your point. There's a different problem here that we need to address. So I always ask that question during the discovery phase. Why are we here? We had a piece of equipment fail. We lost a large client. We lost because I want the end to be, it might be far away, but I want there to be one, so that we can see at the end of this, because you don't want to be reliant on our type of funding long term. So eventually we want you to be able to get to a point where you can qualify for traditional funding, bank financing, SBA financing, and not, or just organically growing. We don't want you to rely upon our funding forever.
Right. And I'm dying to like go there and talk about that, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't even know probably some of these really, I think, unique financing options available. I think that's the place we need to close. So with that, let's maybe take on another reason why somebody might consider taking on funding, and that's new solutions, right? Maybe funding a new product to be developed, entering a new vertical market. Tell us maybe some experience you've had working with clients doing this.
So I was at a conference last some time ago, and someone said in one of the presentations, the riches are in the niches. And I think that nails it. When we as business owners are thinking about a new vertical, I don't think it's always a good idea to do that, especially if the verticals are too different. It just may not be a smart decision. I would say, so my advice would be to, well, I'll give you an example. One client, marble and granite business. They were in the marble and granite business, and they decided to go into the kitchen and bathroom remodeling business also. Okay, does that make sense? Kind of. seemed like it made sense. But then they expanded into their own cabinet line, and then into their own. Now, what ended up happening was they took on so much debt, bless you, to get to that point, and they lost focus on their original best offering, which was the stone.
Yeah.
And this company evaporated. I mean, it was sad to watch, but because they took on too much. So I think it's important, even if it seems logical. What is the benefit of going after this vertical? What does it add to our sales? Does it require new expertise? In this case, it did. They had supply issues with their cabinets, so they had sold a bunch of cabinets that didn't arrive because it was their brand, and they didn't consider those things.
Yeah. All right, so kind of talk through three big buckets. Acquisition, is it, should you buy a competitor? Should you buy a company that provides a tangential complementary service, right? So M&A, merger acquisition. Hiring, thinking about taking on financing, taking on debt, but to fund a talent acquisition strategy, maybe the people required to fulfill future orders, maybe the people to build the next product. The third bucket here, new solutions, developing new solutions. You have some interesting thoughts, David, around just kind of macro. How do you look at the world when thinking about, so kind of going back to where I opened the conversation, how business owners and entrepreneurs think about growing their business. And certainly we're not advocating that everybody should go into debt, right? But entrepreneurship is a risk reward game, right? So speak into this about how you advise clients to think about whether they should or shouldn't take on financing to fund some of these initiatives.
My first piece of advice when someone comes into my room is, why are we speaking? So what do you hope to gain from this conversation? I want to make sure they actually need. So now my advisor hat on is, do you actually need this funding? What do you need it for? And have you gone to your bank? Do you have a relationship with a business banker? Do you have a relationship with a bank? We have, I think this is answering your question. We know what the disqualifiers are for traditional financing. And I want to make sure that the client has exhausted that resource before we have our conversation. Generally speaking, if you can do what you need to do without incurring any debt, you should.
Right.
So if you don't need our financing, don't take it. If you don't need SBA financing, don't take it. So if you have $6 million in the bank and you can do what you need to do by using internal cash, I'm sure there may be exceptions to that rule, but I would say grow organically and just don't take on, whether it's debt or equity, don't take on, don't take on any debt, don't give up any equity if you don't need to. Does that answer your question? It doesn't quite speak to the slide as much.
No, and so you've spoken about this, having looking at the world from a position of abundance instead of a world of lack. What do you mean by that?
So that speaks to the mindset of the entrepreneur, the mindset of any business owner. It's important for us to vibrate positively every day. It's important for us to understand one of my biggest my favorite sayings kind of clashes with something that Mark Cuban says all the time. Your biggest competitor, your only competitor is who you were yesterday. So I believe that we should be competing against ourselves, and it's this asymptotic pursuit of perfection, something that it's not attainable, but the pursuit of it is what drives us each day to be the best versions of ourselves. Mark Cuban says that he's constantly looking over his shoulder because he's thinking that somebody's going to steal his idea and somebody's chasing him. I think that has value too. But it sort of suggests that there's a lack of stuff, a lack of resources, a lack of abundance, and I don't believe that. I think his point is more so we need to keep moving forward, and we can't rest on our laurels, and we can't sit back and take our feet off the gas. But things are going to happen in our day that we have no control over. So you wake up on Tuesday and you realize you're not going to make payroll on Friday. If we approach that from a position of abundance with the proper mindset, we'll get through that challenge. We lose a big client, that wasn't meant to be. We'll move through that challenge, and it's important not to think of that, not to become woeful because something like that happens.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer here, right? I mean, if you listen to Warren Buffett, he would say, Warren Buffett uses debt, but he also says debt is the only way a company can go to zero, right? Because debt is a bet. You're betting that I'm going to take this money, I'm going to pay X% interest on that money, and I'm going to have a Y% return, and Y is better than X, and so I should borrow money to go attain Y. But if you borrow money at X and you don't attain a Y and it fails, you're losing. So there's risk reward. There's other companies. I mean, some of your most well-known companies, especially in the tech space, some of the biggest, fastest growing companies have never been profitable. It's all debt, but they have a model, and you can lose money so long as you continue to grow. But as soon as that tips the other way and you're not growing, you can't lose money because then it's a sinking ship. So whether you're on the conservative end or on the much more risk taker end of that continuum, I think what we would advocate for is have the systems in place, have a repeatable model, and so you're not always just working in the business, you're working on the business, right? In thinking about it, your business is kind of chess pieces on a board. Do you have a model? Do you know what the moves are? And does this move require funding or does it not, right? So let's use that as a segue, David, to talk about really what you do. And again, this is not intended to be an infomercial for Assure or for your firm. We'll have our 30 seconds of fame here in a minute. But let's just spend some time talking about what is alternative funding and banking. I think most business owners understand going to a bank. They certainly understand what I would call country club money. They got a rich uncle or a family member or a friend willing to invest. Yeah. But the irony is when businesses need the money the most, they are not lendable. right? And unless you've got the rich uncle who has money to spare or deeply understands your business and therefore is good with the risk, you could be a really healthy company. You could be growing, but maybe your P&L doesn't look good because you're always reinvesting your money into growth, and therefore your P&L stinks, and the bank doesn't want to lend you any money. There's also the bad scenario, right? You don't know how you're gonna make payroll next week, and no one wants to lend money to a sinking ship because they want their money back, right? So can you just educate our audience today? What is this world of alternative funding in banking? What does that even mean?
Sure. You nailed. Sometimes you'll hear the term primary market, secondary market, traditional funding, alternative funding. So those are kind of interchangeable. Those are some of the terms out there. Anything you can get from a bank, so including SBA funding, is going to be termed just traditional financing. For the most part, anything outside of that in our space is called alternative funding, also known, secondary market. You might hear that term as well, where you have your short-term funding, sometimes without collateral at all, based on strength of revenue of the company. You have, you'll hear the term MCA, merchant cash advance. So these are all terms that may be familiar, may not be familiar, but when you hear them, you should know that you're in the alternative funding space. Typically, comparatively, alternative funding, the cost of alternative funds will be higher than the cost of traditional funds.
Yep.
The speed of traditional funds will be much slower than the speed of alternative funds. And the requirements to receive traditional funds will be more. There will be more to acquire those funds than there will be to acquire alternative funds. I mentioned earlier some typical disqualifiers for traditional financing. One of the biggest ones is credit. So a traditional bank is going to look at credit. If it's not good enough, you can't get traditional financing. They're going to look at collateral. If you don't have any, 99, probably 999 times out of 1,000,
Yeah.
You will not be getting funding. That one might be, the 850 credit score, relationship with the bank for 20 years, and they're like married to the president or something.
Yeah,
The
right.
president. So that, I guess that could happen. And then time in business, and time in which the funds are needed. So if you haven't been in business long enough, you're not going to qualify, like usually 2 years at least. You're not going to qualify for traditional financing. And if you need the money quickly, a bank can't move in the primary market as quickly as they can in the secondary market. So if you need money in 24 hours, a bank won't be able to do that.
Yeah. So, and I think the way we should think about this is it's risk reward, right? So, an SBA loan, Small Business Administration, it's going to be your cheapest money, but you're going to have to jump through a lot of hoops. There are a lot of paperwork in meeting the requirements for an SBA loan, right? And so higher interest rates because these alternative sources of banking. If you need money to make payroll next week, I don't get her and I know what that feels like as an entrepreneur. Who would want to lend you money, right? There's obviously a problem in your business, so they have their own risk reward calculation, right? And so you might have really good reasons for not sure how you're gonna make it next week because you got $1 million order that you're just waiting on the customer to pay you, and they're a couple days late. So there are really good reasons to still have cash flow concerns for a very successful, profitable company. but just know it's going to be there. The lender has to make their risk reward calculation, therefore it's more expensive. Can you speak more specifically, David? So merchant credit financing, accounts receivable financing. Be more specific if you could, because about what are some of the specific ways in which a business owner could get this type of financing?
Okay, so we'll start we'll start what I call at the bottom. So with factoring, accounts receivable financing, invoice financing. Those are some names that are used interchangeably. It's using an invoice to generate funds today. So net 30 invoice to ABC company who has a great credit rating, but they're going to pay you in 30 days. You can take that invoice and that $100,000 invoice, and you can get, when I say 100,000, $85,000. Let's say 85% of the invoice in a couple of days. And when ABC company pays that invoice on day 30, which they will, based on their credit, the D&B credit rating, then you'll get the balance of that 15% minus the what's called the factoring fee or the discount fee. So that's a great way for businesses to tap into cash that is already in your business. That's a great way to organically grow without incurring any type of debt. Really, it's just an expense.
Yeah. I don't think we will talk about rates specifically here, but I think fair to say much higher rates if you calculated these factoring fees as in thought of them as interest rates. This is expensive money, right? But to your point, if you don't know how you're making payroll next week, but you've got a rock solid customer that's going to pay you $100,000 in 30 days, that could be a really healthy business. You might have something really special growing, and you'd hate to have to shut the doors because it's a timing issue, right? And so if you had to pay a pretty high expense to get that, 85% of that $100,000 30 days earlier, 25 days earlier to make a payroll, might hold your nose a little bit about the expense, but it sure as heck beats going out of business.
Yeah.
And if you've got lightning in a bottle, then expensive money can still be turned into a higher ROI if invested in the right places. So factoring, this whole financing against your accounts receivable is one area. What's another area beyond accounts receivable?
So we're going from least costly to most costly. So invoice funding, factoring is actually the least expensive. Second would be using, so it's a form of the merchant cash advance using credit card receipts. So companies that actually take credit cards, the funding company would come in, evaluate the company, and they would fund them and then take a percentage every day from their credit card receipts until the agreed upon amount is repaid. I think this is a good way also because you're using your sales to generate capital. I think that's good. And if that's all you have, so it's relatively easy to start, and there's no collateral required. So the funding company is going to be using but they do have at least the reasonable certainty that you're going to keep selling the way you've been selling over the past 6 months, 4 months, 12 months. To recover that from credit card receipts before it gets to the client.
Yep.
The most expensive is what we call revenue financing, So we're actually factoring future revenue. So we're going to look at the company's revenue today and over the past 4 months or so. We're going to predict that they are going to continue to make that revenue over the next period of time, so that we can recover the funded amount plus the cost of that money. And general rule of thumb, the funded amount in that with that product is going to equal the monthly, an average monthly top line revenue. So if you're seeking $100,000 that way, and let's say you don't take credit cards, and you don't have any collateral, your company should be doing somewhere in the neighborhood, like in like next door neighbor, of $1.2 million per year to justify that $100,000 funding. And then that amount, the payments on that type of loan will be made monthly, weekly, or daily from the business operating account. And that's that's the highest cost of money.
All right. So kind of recap here. So as we're coming out of a pandemic, my words, we're entering a phase of an endemic. I think, we are learning and will continue to learn how to live with COVID. Everyone, we're all in the same storm, but not in the same boat, right? And so some people have come out of this really strong financially. PPP and ERTC was really helpful, super helpful to a lot of folks. There's other people, businesses, and industries that there was no amount of PPP or ERTC that could have saved them. And so there are some people thinking, okay, we survived, and now we need to get into growth mode, and they might have a model, and they're looking for money to grow. In the 3 ways we covered, mergers and acquisitions, M&A, is it the right time to buy a company? Hiring, should we be thinking about actually using debt to hire people and talent? And then number 3 is to build out new products, new solutions, new services, and really make those investments that require cash. For companies who are wanting to do any of those 3 things and are willing to take the risk reward, you're advising, David, that go for the secure, inexpensive money. Go for an SBA loan. Go for a traditional bank loan. Go for the country club rich uncle money. But if you have viable needs, whether it's because you're in trouble or you really have something special that debt can help you grow, right? Then there are alternative means, right? So we have accounts receivable financing. So somebody owes you money, you can borrow money against that, right? And when a bank won't. If you're a retail business and you have credit cards, there are, and you collect a lot of money that way, then there are merchant financing options where the lender will get in the path of that, so that they will lend you and front you the money, and they make sure that they just get paid back. You're not writing a check every month to pay them back. They're just going to take a percentage of those credit cards to make sure they get paid back.
Correct.
And then number 3 is financing against future revenues. And so that's kind of the escalating scale of the expense and interest rates and fees against that money. Did I say all that right, David?
Yeah, that was perfect. Yeah, that's absolutely accurate. One thing I would throw in as a resource to the viewers, there's an untapped, or sometimes untapped part of the traditional financing space, and that's local resources. So every city has these local resources. It might be through a chamber, it might be through a business organization, a minority business organization that will say, hey, if you apply, it could be grant money, it could be very inexpensive money. The challenge with that money is that it's not always that fast. Right. The advantage to that money is it's often not bank-like. So the qualifications to get that money are often fewer than you would if you went to a bank. So they may overlook a credit score that's below 650. They may give you a little bit more than the collateral you have can support. You haven't been in business for 2 years, but you've been in business for 1 year, and everything looks pretty good. We're local, might be backed by a nonprofit. So that's a good way. That's a good resource for, especially I'll say small businesses to tap into $5 grand, 10 grand, 15 grand, like that. But they will be, my experience is that they move pretty slowly.
Yeah, very good. All right, you know what, David? I think enjoy the conversation. I think this last slide especially helped people understand. I think there's a lot of people just don't know that there's whole another world of financing here. So you're at your wit's end because you got lightning in a bottle and you can't get the bank to lend you the money to leverage it and grow it, or you've got some real serious cash flow challenges in the time that you need your bank the most. They're not there for you. You do have other options, and so I think this is really helpful for folks. The other thing I would say, and just take 30 seconds on Assure, and then I'll ask David to 30 seconds on his company. When I think about growth, I think about scaling your business, right? And do you have infrastructure to scale? Certainly, there's a cash component, right? Do you have the financing to fund that growth and that development? So whether it's buying a company, hiring employees, building a new product or service, these things take money, but they also take people, right? And so most small companies struggle going from one, they plateau out. They can grow to a certain point, but they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the people, the systems, the technology to get to that next level. And so one of those next levels would be hiring an HR person. You get over a certain number of employees, you just simply need HR, right? You got to comply with state, local, federal laws. Taxation gets complex. Talent management gets harder and harder as you try to build an employment brand and bring on talent that maybe is no longer friends and family and referral based. That you got to go out to the marketplace and hire people that you don't know and they don't know you. All that gets harder the bigger you get, but you might not be able to afford the $70, $90, $110,000 SHRM certified HR professional. So at a fraction, truly pennies on the dollar fraction, we provide those services for small businesses. So on the far right, Total HR, we can be that Total HR department for your organization. Your employees call us, we are your HR department. On the far left, we can simply provide that compliance framework for your leadership, and that might be just you as an owner entrepreneur. It might be you and a couple of other people in a management team, maybe an office manager who administers your payroll and HR. But we're going to make sure that you're compliant. We're going to make sure that you're following the law. We're going to make sure you have an employee handbook that helps to better facilitate conversations and expectations with employees and keep you out of trouble down the line in case problems do arise. And eventually, after enough time, they always do. Or in the middle, strategic HR for managers, something here in between where we're supporting the management and the leadership team for a fraction of the cost, but we're also on offense, helping you to develop talent management strategies, providing training, sexual harassment training, ongoing skill training to help you build a more successful organization, all at a fraction of the cost that you could ever do it in-house, and in such a way that you can really focus on your core business and scale up and grow. David, could you just maybe take 30 seconds, just talk about what your company is and how people might contact you?
Yeah, certainly. So the company is FundUup. We'll be in business 17 years in this coming January. We help small and mid-sized businesses get funding, both secured and unsecured, when traditional means are not available. That typically means there's a challenge in one of three areas: challenge with credit, it's not good enough; challenge with collateral, there either is no collateral, there's something wrong with the collateral, or there's not enough collateral; or a challenge with time, either time in business or time in which the funds are needed. We fund anywhere from $1,500 up to $10 million unsecured. The largest secured deal was a real estate development deal that we did that was just upwards of 250 million. So our niche in this market, flexibility, speed, and partnership. So we actually want to partner with our clients. This space can be very messy. This space can be very very smarmy, dare I say,
Yeah.
with some unscrupulous individuals and companies who work in the space. We aim to rise above those and actually partner with our clients to help them achieve the financing goals they need to achieve.
Well, David, I think a testament to you and your organization that you built. You spent a significant time on today's call telling people why they shouldn't use alternative financing. That if they can get money in traditional ways, an SBA loan through a bank, that they should, right? And that they shouldn't go into debt unnecessarily. But there are times when you need it, and so agree. This is a little bit of a rough industry. There are some not so nice actors that can take advantage of people in maybe they're one of their darkest hours. And so your integrity in this that means an awful lot to us as a referral partner here. So appreciate your time and your expertise, and I really enjoyed the conversation, David.
Yes, absolutely, Scott. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
And to everyone else, thanks for joining today. This is what we do. We try to bring the very best information we can to help small and mid-sized companies grow. We have over 80,000 clients that buy payroll, human resources, time and attendance, and HR services from us. And if we can help you in any of these ways, we would love to do so. Until next week, everyone have a good day.